The U.S. Secretary of State has met with the Colombian president. The Venezuelan government condemns an allegedly biased human rights report. And Libya could see a prompt restart of oil production.
Under certain conditions and with...
Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Colombia for an official visit. Pompeo met with President Duque at the presidential palace to discuss topics including the situation in Venezuela and the supposed war on drugs being led by the Colombian government. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government has denounced Pompeo's LATAM tour as part of an ongoing strategy to destabilize the nation. Pompeo's latest tour started in South America on Thursday when he visited Suriname and Guyana. He then traveled to Brazil before heading to Colombia. And on Friday, protesters in Brazil gathered to demonstrate against the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State. Protesters mobilized in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, calling Pompeo's meeting with Venezuelan migrants a cynical move. Meanwhile, Workers' Party President Gleisi Hoffmann pointed out that the administration of President Jair Bolsonaro has once again shown its submission to the policies of the United States. Well, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro also denounced the attempts made by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to conspire with neighboring governments to attack the Bolivarian Republic.
Mike Pompeo is on a warmongering tour against Venezuela, but it has backfired on him. Mike Pompeo has failed in all his attempts to align the governments of the continent in a war against Venezuela. Mike Pompeo is calling for a war against Venezuela, but he has failed. He has failed at the Bolivarian National Militia and our people, and our Bolivarian armed forces must be increasingly ready, better prepared to defend peace, territorial integrity, and the right of our nation to development. The battered, macabre terrorist, coup-plotting right wing and the U.S. government have activated orders and plans to seriously restore the peace in Venezuela. I denounce this to the world. In the next few days, as we always do, we will present conclusive evidence. So, 4,512,000 militiamen and militia women, listen up, be alert, 1,000 eyes.
President Maduro also announced that conclusive evidence against the detained U.S. spy and his work would soon be made available.
To act as we have acted, we have recently captured, I have to say it today, a gringo spy. There they are. I don't know if they have shown the evidence. A member of the CIA, a gringo spy, member of the CIA. He is convicted and has confessed, and we captured him with all the evidence of espionage activities, to sabotage the refineries of the country, to sabotage electrical targets. He had participated in the Iraq War, and he was under the CIA command in Iraq. And how did we capture him? Following information from SP3, from the people. From the people, that's how we captured him.
Staying in Venezuela, the Bolivarian government recently denounced that accusations of human rights abuses are being used as a means to question the credibility of the upcoming parliamentary elections.
This week, a human rights report sponsored by the Lima Group was published. The organization of right-wing government slanderers of the Venezuelan Revolution promoted this report, which is being called a ghost document, filled with inaccuracies and mistakes. Caracas rejected this report while validating its joint work with the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, with whom it collaborates regularly.
This document lacks of credibility, and it is an act of propaganda against our country, and we will respond to it with the law, with justice. In Venezuela, whoever violates human rights will be condemned, punished, and the public ministry has proved it will do so. That our people condemned, investigated, prosecuted.
Analysts think that this report is written and published within the framework of the political and economic pressure plan against Venezuela, aiming at the December parliamentary elections through a strategy of international coercion.
The problem of this report is that it seems more than clear the purpose of using it as a legal excuse under the United Nations jurisdiction to initiate criminal actions against the Venezuelan leadership. It is not the first attempt. Its credibility is questionable.
The facts show that this report will be used as a trigger to strengthen the strategy of the United States and the OAS, which is seeking to sabotage the parliamentary elections due to the failure of the opposition sectors that gather around Guaidó. That's how the purpose is crystal clear. The U.S. interests are actively working to discredit the poll in December.
More and more countries know the fragility of the elections of the National Assembly, scheduled by Maduro for December 6th of this year, will be no fair nor free.
Sectors of the opposition and Chavismo called the European Union to accompany the process. However, the bloc insists that Venezuela change its legal instances.
Strong support from ICG minister to continue working for a negotiated political solution for Venezuela crisis. The celebration of free and fair election is key. Only mere change to the conditions and the schedule could allow the deployment of an EU electoral observation mission.
As in other occasion of Pulseo International, a bloc that supports the self-determination of Venezuela with China, Russia, and other allied governments, is configured.
These elections must be respected and supported by the international community. The government of China always supports and will continue to support the efforts of the government and the opposition of Venezuela to resolve the difference through dialogues and consultations.
The maximum pressure strategy announced by the United States includes various destabilization formulations and is preceded by the November U.S. presidential election.
This period before the elections is a very dangerous time when we can expect political pressures, economic pressures, increased psychological warfare, and also military operations, all regular and irregular, against the Bolivarian revolution.
Internally, the different political sectors already registered with the National Electoral Council have said that the elections will be held inevitably on next December 6. Leonel Retamal Muñoz, TeleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
With that, we'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Bolivia's de facto president, Janine Áñez, pulled out from the October elections earlier this week in hopes of giving the right wing a boost against the movement towards Socialism Party. We have more in the following report.
After the publishing of a latest poll to show that the movement towards Socialism Party is well on its way to win a first-round victory during October's elections, the de facto president removed her name from the race.
I am setting aside my candidacy for president in order to safeguard democracy. This is not a sacrifice, it's an honor. I do this despite the risk it could further split the vote and lead to a mass victory in October.
The candidate said to benefit the most from the decision is Carlos Mesa, who has remained in second place in most polls. The right wing hopes to strengthen his platform, hoping to force a run of votes.
We salute the president's decision to drop out of the race. We believe this will allow any of our potential voters to place their hopes on a candidate that has a chance to beat the left wing.
But the leading party has said this strategy is doomed to fail.
De ninguna manera nos afecta ni nos beneficia, ¿no?
This doesn't affect us, nor does it benefit us. It's simply a decision they took.
There are shortages everywhere, of fuel, of medicine, of food. There are protests nationwide against price hikes. There are too many topics that the right has left by the wayside.
The Electoral Court has said they have not yet received any official document in regards to Áñez's withdrawal. As such, the question remains on whether only Áñez is dropping out or if her entire alliance is disbanding.
Tenían la posibilidad. Political parties had the chance to substitute a candidate until September 3. After that date passed, a candidate may drop out, but the parties they represented cannot nominate a new candidate.
But the Juntos alliance has clarified they will remain in the race. With Nias' exit, the right wing is down to 6 candidates to face off against Luis Arce, the candidate for the Mass Party.
The president of Peru survived an impeachment vote late on Friday. Martin Vizcarra was accused by members of Congress of inciting aides to lie to anti-graft investigators. This in turn led to the impeachment proceedings. After a 10-hour debate, only 32 legislators voted for his dismissal, while 78 voted against and 15 abstained.
All the people who are in bad financial situation, who have businesses collapsing and debts for medical clinics, and who have health problems, we have put them aside for 8 days because of everything that has happened this week and because of what we have done as authorities. What we have to do from now is to resume the work based on an agenda in favor of the people.
Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei has tested positive for COVID-19. In revealing the news, Giammattei said he would continue his work from home while self-isolating. He also ordered all members of his cabinet and the Vice President, Guillermo Castillo, to be tested for the virus. Meanwhile, the Minister of Culture also contracted the novel coronavirus. Guatemala has so far reported over 83,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 3,000 deaths. Staying in Latin America, a recent report on human rights violations in Colombia shows that female social leaders face greater danger than most others, as they are often the target of murder, sexual violence, and forced displacement.
Between 2013 and 2019, over 1,300 violent attacks were recorded against women social leaders, and 84 of them were killed, while over 1,000 received threats. These numbers were reported by an NGO, which also says this highlights structural violence in the country.
We are seeing an increase in social-political violence against those who defend human rights, particularly in the case of women. Women are also stigmatized in the territories, and as a consequence, it leads to violence and human rights violations.
The risk for them is greater due to their gender, race, and ethnicity. They face threats, homicides, sexual violence, and forced displacement.
To be a social leader to me means suffering in my own skin, the physical and emotional aggressions. We live in fear. We don't know what will happen to our children if we are not here tomorrow.
This report is being presented at a time when the defense of human rights is costing many Colombians their lives, and at a time when numerous violations of human rights have been recorded at the hands of the police.
They pulled me off the motorcycle by my hair. They started to electrocute me then, with the TeleSUR. They took all of my belongings, my cell phone too. They then locked me in a cell with 11 men.
The outlook continues to be uncertain as impunity remains in place. In 7 years, there have only been 4 convictions for the hundreds of homicides, while a majority of cases remain in the investigation phase.
Turning our attention to Africa, Libyan military leader Khalifa Haftar has agreed to lift the months-long blockade on oil fields and ports, which were under the control of the Libyan National Army.
We have decided to resume oil production and exports under certain conditions and with necessary measures that will guarantee a fair distribution of revenues and that they will not be used to support terrorism.
South African health authorities reported over 2,000 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, taking the total number to over 657,000. The Minister of Health noted that the number of COVID-19 tests conducted has surpassed 4 million, placing South Africa first on the continent as it relates to testing. Meanwhile, 85 people have died from the novel coronavirus in one day, pushing the cumulative number of fatalities to over 15,800. The nation ranks 9th in the world in terms of the total number of coronavirus cases confirmed. Hundreds of people gathered in Morocco's capital Rabat on Friday to protest against the normalization of ties between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain.
This event, organized by Moroccan coalitions in support of the Palestinian people, is there to affirm the position of the Moroccan people on all the agreements of betrayal and normalization that the Emirates and Bahrain have concluded. From this place, in front of the Moroccan parliament, we send a letter of support to the Palestinian people, a letter of attachment to the freedom of Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. And the most shouted slogan I have heard today is, Moroccans will never forget Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. We are here to remind the Moroccan state and the whole world that we consider that the Palestinian cause is also ours, and we have made sacrifices, and Moroccans have given their lives for the Palestinian cause.
Similar protests also took place in the Bahraini capital, Manama. Participants in the demonstration carried banners condemning the normalization of ties with Israel and in support of the Palestinian cause. Bahrain is the second Gulf country to normalize its ties with Israel in less than a month, following the UAE. Iranian health authorities confirmed over 2,800 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, taking the total number of cases to over 400,000. Ministry of Health spokeswoman Sima Lari also reported 176 new COVID-19 related deaths, pushing fatalities to more than 23,000. Meanwhile, the number of people who have fully recovered stands at over 350,000, while more than 38,000 patients are in a critical condition. We have more stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands took to the streets of Thailand's Bangkok demanding political reforms. The protesters have been taking to the streets since July, calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-o-cha and a complete overhaul of the government. The demonstrators defied a ban on public gatherings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They are also calling for fresh elections and a new constitution.
Now we are fighting with so-called dictatorship government that claim themselves to be democratic, and we actually see that is not true. So we want the reform, the political reform.
2 people have died and 1 is missing after Hurricane Ianos swept over western Greece. Emergency workers are also searching for a boat carrying 55 migrants in the Mediterranean Sea after it sent a distress signal due to the storm. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from their houses in some parts of the capital, Athens. The storm also affected Greece's western islands, resulting in flights and other transport services being cancelled. Following an official visit to the Czech Republic on Friday, the Greek foreign minister called for dialogue with Turkish authorities to resolve the current tension over oil drilling activities in the eastern Mediterranean.
We believe that a dialogue should start and that international law should not be violated. Of course, in this area, no one should try to prevail by force. Greece is always open to a dialogue with Turkey regarding coastal waters in the exclusive economic zone, provided that Turkey stops its provocative acts in the area.
Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also expressed his government's willingness to enter into a political dialogue to address the situation in the eastern Mediterranean.
We have no problem on the issue of meeting Mitsotakis, but what we will discuss, under which framework will the discussion take place, that is important. As long as there is goodwill, we are ready to meet, whether it's in third countries or via video conference. There would be no question of us evading discussions. However, if the Greek president goes to the island and engages in a show of force, then we would display an even greater show of force.
Dozens of tourist guides staged a peaceful protest behind Paris Notre Dame Cathedral to call on the French government for financial aid. They lamented that nearly half of the city's tour guides have been unable to work and urgently need financial assistance. The coronavirus pandemic has negatively impacted the country's tourism industry due to travel restrictions and lockdowns imposed to halt the spread of the virus. Earlier this month, facing a resurgence in infections, France's government unveiled a €100 billion recovery plan aimed at creating jobs, saving struggling businesses, and pulling the country out of its worst economic slump since World War II.
Some of the profession are independent, which means they have access to a solidarity fund. That's good until December. But the big problem is we need urgent financial aid for those who have zero income now, and that is to say about 41% of the profession. There's about 200 of us here today, and non-stop since June we've been demonstrating, we've written letters, we have no reply, so we're trying to attract the attention of the government to help these people, and to at least call this year null and void, and that this year is written off, and that people can again apply for unemployment benefit until the work comes back next year, because it won't come back until next year. So we need really money to survive until next year.
Over to the United States. New York City school teachers have demonstrated against the reopening of schools. The teachers are against in-person classes due to resume in the next few weeks, fearing this could result in the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus. City authorities have insisted that schools can reopen safely and have assured that safety measures shall be put in place to prevent the spread of the viral respiratory illness.
Until there's a plan, I'm not walking into no school building. If there's a job offer where I can do it remotely, then I'm fine. I keep my son safe. I keep my mom, who is of age, safe. That plays a factor as well. If my son goes back to his school, I don't know if his schools are going to follow the right protocol. And then it's like, I don't know what my job may expect of me.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman to be appointed to the Supreme Court, passed away at the age of 87 in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Judge Ginsburg was appointed to the legislative body by President Bill Clinton in 1993, where she served for more than 27 years. She was known as an advocate for women's rights and for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Her death, while still serving on the court, has created a rare election year opportunity for President Donald Trump to nominate a Republican replacement, which he announced today he intends to do. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSUREnglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on StarSat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media for TeleSUR English. I am Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.